We gonna try to get it to the Grio first, Marc. So you not be DMing and texting you when we start taking on these important cases.
You are watching the Grio, Marc Lamont. Welcome back to the Grio. There is no denying it. Black stories and history are under attack. In the past few months, there's been a rollout of proposed legislation to erase AP African American Studies from schools, not to mention that never-ending battle against the boogeyman known as CRT. Well, one guy, he's looking to change all of that. 23-year-old Dillon Bernard is on a mission to keep our stories alive. How? Through his social impact company. It's called Team DB. This black-owned company consists of young creators who are elevating human-centered and culture-shifting projects. My brother, Dillon Bernard, the founder of Team DB, I want to thank you for joining me on the Grio.
Thanks for having me.
How did you come up with an idea for something like this?
You know, I'm somebody who was raised on the internet. Like, that's all I know in terms of creating things. So when I was 12, I started my first media project, and I really saw the power in amplifying our own stories. And then back in 2021, I was a little bit frustrated by the state of the amplification of Black stories. So I was like, let me actually do something about this, and let me combine my love for activism and culture in order to also empower a bunch of other creatives. So we created Team DB to do exactly that. You know, we've been able to provide opportunities for about 200 plus creatives of color and several Black creators at that. And we've also been able to work with 30 plus clients to just really create content that reaches young and multicultural folks. So that was really the power. I saw the power in it. I did the thing, and again, been figuring out as I fly, because there is, very limited blueprints for something like this. So so far, it's going interestingly, and we're really excited that we've been able to slowly start to make some change, because we know we need it.
Absolutely. Why the name Team DB?
Yeah, so Team DB is representative of my initials. So I really wanted to build something around me. But I think also, as we think through the projects, a lot of these projects are not about me or the team. They're about things like racial justice and climate justice. In fact, about 40% of our work is focused on climate justice. All our work is somehow connected to racial justice. So, it's really about, leveraging my vision, but, in turn also leveraging all of our different campaigns and projects. So what we really do is create massive campaigns focused around young people. So one of the campaigns we led is something called Young People Address the Nation. So right after President Biden gave his State of the Union, we had about 30 young people give the youth response to the State of the Union, which is a super powerful way to just, again, capture back that attention and stories to us. So that's how I really approach it, is what are the moments that folks are talking about, and how can we leverage that to just shift back to the parties that we're talking about. So that's how I always think about this work, is use that as a hook and then get folks to come to the conversation.
I like that. And for you, as you pointed out, the conversation is centered around social justice. Why is that such a passion of yours?
Yeah, so I think I'm such a news fiend. I've always been watching the news, and I think being somebody who's always just saw everything on the internet, I always saw these key moments. I'm thinking about Trayvon a lot in terms of how my work started, and every time I see another thing happen, I'm like, this is why I'm trying to stay within this work, because of how important it is to feature those stories and really focus around solutions. So, something interesting that I always found is that we've been able to really coalesce this interesting network of just young creatives who are about the same mission, who are committed to transformative change. And that's all we're doing, is we're committed to transforming everything, transforming systems, but again, using the power of creativity and art, because, everybody has now a powerful device, their phone in their hand. Everybody in some way is a creator. So for us, it's about leveraging that, and that's how we've been able to do it. It's we have a wide range of just artists and creators who are just instrumental to the movement, whether they're amplifying things, whether they're creating things. I really think it's all hands on deck in order to drive change. So that's how we think about it.
Talk to me more about using that digital media to drive change. You talked about creating, you talked about amplifying things. So what are the various ways that people can use digital media to change things?
Yeah, so I think at the lowest hanging fruit that I find is amplification. So, what we did a couple months ago is created something called the Amplify Pledge, where it really asks people to commit to actively amplifying social justice movement. So every week on amplifypledge.org, we give folks a concrete way to take action. I mean, most folks, that's a simple, easy thing to do. It's to share things on their Instagram stories, it's to post a tweet. So that's the lowest hanging fruit. And then we have a bunch of partnerships with nations and who need either amplification, who need folks on the ground in order to drive change. So that's the other thing that we think a lot about, is that there is so much momentum that is needed to sustain movement. So when we're thinking about offline, and really the offline actions and taking the online to offline, that's what we're thinking about, is making sure we're actively engaging. Because for me, I'm somebody who that's how I approach a lot of what I do, is that I was behind the social media strike for some key parts of the youth climate movement. And what my focus was to do is like to make sure folks saw something online and then ultimately striked with us. So that's how I approach how we're doing things at Team DBI as well.
Your work isn't happening in a vacuum. It's not happening in a neutral space. You're doing the work of justice at a moment where our history, our stories, our lives, our culture, our truths are all under attack. They're literally being challenged every day. How do you do this work in that space? How do you combat it?
Yeah, so I think how we've been combating it is just telling more stories, reaching, and how I think about this is reaching people at every corner of the internet and meeting people where they are. So I think you can't argue with somebody's lived experiences. So we've just been like, let's create more and let's kind of flood the social media, the digital sphere with our stories. And I think we've seen the power of digital in order to drive change. I think, thinking about youth movements around gun violence prevention, climate justice, historic youth vote, racial justice. All of these have been components that have been built by online, or built through kind of online means and have been sustaining themselves offline. So I think that is so instrumental, is us for just to continue to tell our stories, tell them authentically, and to keep telling them. Because I don't think folks always understand how important it is that this media and storytelling angle and this narrative change angle is critical to really drive culture change and to drive people to ultimately be with us, or to just, again, continue the drumbeat of
Right,
movements.
for justice, and that's what
So
we
I think
have to
that,
do. Dillon,
yes,
we got to run, but I want to thank you so
exactly.
much for your great work that you do and for joining us on the Grio. Everybody stay right here, because next up we honor the pioneer of tennis, Althea Gibson.